Previously on The Legend of Zeke St. James, we wandered through the muddy streets of Clarksdale, Mississippi, and followed a boy who could turn silence into music. We traced his footsteps through the cotton fields, passed from porches and funerals through the sound of gospel, juke joints, and back alley blues. That was Act 1, the making of the man. Now we follow the man up north. We follow to Act 2, Northbound Soul. The year is 1941. Ezekiel boards a train bound for Harlem, New York, with nothing but a saxophone and a sound in his chest that won't let him rest. This is the part of the story where myth and music collide. Smoky backrooms and neon-lit clubs. Zeke will face giants, carve out his legend in brass, and fall prey to the dark twin of genius. Addiction. This isn't just the rise of a jazz phenom, it's the slow-burning tragedy of a man too. Too pure for the spotlight, too haunted to stop playing, and too stubborn to save himself. So light a cigarette and dim the lights. Let's head north. This is The Legend of Zeke St. James. During the research for these episodes, I uncovered some cassette tapes in regards to Ezekiel and discovered an interview with Irish club owner Paddy Hallahan, and this is what he had to say about Ezekiel.
First time I saw him at 17 playing outside the Lafayette, he'd a hat in the ground, loved and mushy that lad could weigh. People would stop and they'd drop Everton. We thought it was Coleman Hawkins. Until we looked over and saw a bit closer that it wasn't, this new fella.
Zeke arrives in New York City, stepping into the explosive jazz scene of the 1940s. Harlem is alive with sound, ambition, and especially danger. Zeke is no longer just a gifted southern kid. He's now a young man with a horn, a suitcase, and something dark coiled deep inside. In the end of the 1930s, the Great Migration finally gave him a ticket out. He hopped on a freight train to New York with no plan, just a saxophone and a heart full of blues. When the train pulled out of Clarksdale in the wet hush of an early spring morning, the Delta blurred into mud and memory as Zeke sat pressed against the window, his saxophone case on his lap like a sacred bundle. He had a Bible from his mother and 50 cents from his Uncle Ray. But the real currency was something more intangible. A storm in his chest and a sound in his head that wouldn't let him sleep. The further north the train climbed, the tighter his grip became on the instrument. Not out of fear, but from that quiet desperation known only to the poor and the gifted. The kind that makes a man believe that if he doesn't get out now, he never will. That if he doesn't find the sound he's chasing, he'll die before 30. He arrived at Penn Station in 1940. It was loud and fast and alive, the opposite of Mississippi. People didn't look at you in New York, they moved around you, like water around a stone. Zeke walked north, away from the suited bankers, and toward the only thing that made sense to him, the music. He moved through Harlem like a shadow. One night he'd play rent parties. Next night he'd be backstage at the Apollo, slipping past security, listening to the likes of Ella Fitzgerald or Duke Ellington. But it was at Minton's Playhouse where Zeke's legend began. The Harlem jam scene was cruel and holy. Cats like Sonny Rollins and Jackie McLean and even a young bird, Charlie Parker. They'd show up to duel. And Zeke didn't smile. He didn't strut. He just played. And what he played stayed with you. He had one run-in with Lightning Jack, a baritone bruiser from Newark, known for breaking egos. They played 4 choruses head-to-head. Jack left early, muttering something about country voodoo. After that, people started calling Zeke the Phantom Horn. He never looked comfortable in a crowd. He was always in the corner, with a saxophone on his knee, polishing it with an old rag like a ritual. You'd see him on the street and think he was just another skinny kid with big eyes and callous fingers. But on stage, he was a sermon with a reed. One night at a club called the Palm Grove, a quiet man with dark shades leaned against the wall and listened. Miles Davis. He was still young, still hungry, but already mythic in his cool. Zeke played a solo that night that emptied the room of sound. One drawn-out phrase that made grown men stop chewing. Women hold their breath, and bartenders freeze mid-pour. Miles approached him afterwards. "You always play like that?" he asked. Zeke just shrugged. Miles nodded once. "You ain't playing to impress. You playing to survive." They didn't speak again for a long time, but from that night on, Zeke was welcome in any room Miles walked into. By 1944, Zeke was everywhere. No records, no interviews, just legend. He played with Monk, sat in with Mingus, shared smoke breaks with Dizzy, but you'd never find his name on a marquee. He didn't want fame, he wanted fire. And that kind of fire burns you up from the inside. One night after a gig, a bassist named Lou handed him a little glass vial and said, "Helps keep the edge off." Zeke didn't say anything, he just took it. That was the beginning. At first it made the music slower, heavier, deeper, but eventually it made everything heavier. His playing became sparse, unpredictable. He'd vanish for days, show up gaunt, eyes wide and distant. They said he had the sound of a man digging his own grave with every note, and maybe he was. By the late 40s, he was spoken of like a ghost. He'd show up at clubs in Queens, blow 2 choruses that made grown musicians question their careers, and then he'd disappear before the sun came up. He lived in a small walk-up on 147th and Edgecombe. The room had nothing but a mattress, turntable, and a stack of worn-out records. Lester Young, Billie Holiday, Art Tatum. He once told a girl, maybe the only one he ever let close, "I'm not afraid of dying, I'm afraid of being average." By now, Zeke wasn't just respected, he was feared. Nobody could play with the pain he did. And nobody could pull him back from wherever he was heading. By 1944, New York had changed him. Not softened him, but sharpened him. The clubs got louder, the nights got longer, and Zeke played fewer notes, but deeper ones. Notes with weight, notes that told you everything without a word. Some nights he'd play until dawn, other nights he'd vanish, holed up in a small, dim room off Edgecombe Avenue. There in the flicker of a single bulb and the scratch of a record spinning under dust, he sat by the window like a man waiting for a sign. The saxophone leaned against the wall beside him, not shining like it used to, but still holy. Outside, Harlem swirled with movement. Lovers arguing in alleyways, horns honking from distant cabs, preachers calling sinners home from street corners. Inside, Zeke sat perfectly still, one hand on his horn, one eye on the past. He wasn't finished, not even close. But already there was something haunted in him, a weight that would only grow heavier with every gig and every fix. Every night he couldn't sleep. They say he was chasing a perfect sound, something no one had heard yet. Something maybe only he heard in his dreams. And if you passed his window at just the right time, you might have heard him whisper, "Not yet, not yet, it ain't right yet." This was still just the beginning. The city hadn't swallowed him. It had only opened its jaws. And so ends Act 2, Northbound Soul. Zeke St. James has made it to New York, but arrival is never the same as arrival in full. The city hasn't made him. It hasn't broken him, not yet. What it has done is awaken something in him. In smoky clubs and dim hotel rooms, in whispered rumours passed from musician to musician, the name Zeke starts to spread. Not with noise, but with reverence. He's no longer the boy from Clarksdale. He's the man at the edge of something vast, but the genius is a heavy thing to carry. And as the music gets louder, the nights get darker. Join us in Act 3 as Zeke rises into legend, brushes shoulders with the giants of jazz, and begins his long descent into obsession, brilliance, and isolation.